Is your company implementing a data mesh? Stay with us for learning what it means. We are going to have 2 episodes on this topic. The first one, we're going to talk about the basics of data mesh. The second one, we're going to talk about the use cases and the state of the art. Hi Miron, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Miguel. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the experts. Very happy to have you with us today.
I'm happy to be here, actually.
Good. Would you like to give a short introduction about you to the audience?
Sure, I can do that. No problem. So I'm Miron Kropp. I'm the head of DARDIM, Data at Rest, Data and Motion. So everything concerning data engineering, big data at a company called the Unbelievable Machine Company, which belongs to Orange Business Services, one of their newly acquired companies. So I'm the guy trying to make the world better with handling data and big data.
Yeah, and you are working on very interesting topics. You are working, for example, on data mesh. So very
That's
hot
true.
topic since like half a year, 1 year ago.
Maybe 1.5, 2 years if you're in the data business, but yes, it's kind of getting out there now, and it's quite an interesting and large topic, actually.
Okay. And what is data mesh about?
Yeah, if you look at data, and like I said, the data community in the last couple of years, what happened was that we solved a lot of things on a very technical level. So we came from software engineering, we looked at it very technical, and we tried to solve it and make it very fast, crunching big numbers, solving the machine learning problems, and so on, making data available. Um, but the more the companies learned of the values of data and using the data and the benefit of it, they had to kind of get more of a less, let's say, geeky way of handling data, but a more of a community setup, a more of a business setup. So what needed to be done, or what is currently what we do, is basically setting up something like a framework for working with data, and a framework from a business perspective, how we can set it up well within companies, and especially larger companies. And what we did historically, we looked at then, or the data community, as if I talk in we looked at what software has developed like. So what we needed to do is software needed to change their development status, so they needed to be easier to use tools, they needed to be faster to develop, they needed to be stable software landscapes for use, they needed the right information at the right time, and they needed to make it more accessible to all of the development teams. And we are doing the same thing in the data space now with the data mesh. So if you look at it historically, what we had is a data warehouse mostly approach. We had data lakes, we have data lake houses if we go into a more modern situation. So mostly it was a centralized approach for certain types of data with a centralized team often attached to it. Um, and there are a lot of problems with that approach. So you have a centralized team which handles the data on a technical level, but which doesn't have an approach for the domain level, so for the understanding of the data. And then you have somebody who needs the data and looks at the results, but they not necessarily understand the data, and the same team has to do it. So, and then this scales out. And what happens is then that a lot of people want access to the central data, to the central team which does it, which then doesn't scale anymore. You have a bottleneck in the middle. Sometimes this used to be solved in a different way. So you had a lot of separate teams who handled their separate data, but often what happens then is you have every team and everyone who's working on it has their own tool setup, their own tool landscape, their own data setup, how they store data, how data looks. And then if somebody says, yeah, well, we have the data and somebody else wants to use it, it's basically impossible because you have to do so much changes to the data that everybody can use it. So this would be the other extreme. You have stuff in the middle, but the solution would be to go in, and that's what we call data mesh. Actually, is the idea of the solution. So on one side, you have to look at the data problem as such, that data is available for everybody and usable. So that would be enablement, and that is the idea of making data a product. So one of the bases of data mesh is that you have data as a product, so it's stable in a certain sense, that you know how to find it, and you know that it's available and useful and what is in it. Yeah. The second one is that you want to enable the domain experts to be able to use the data and the data as a product, and to do this decentralized if possible. So what you do is you give the domain owners domain ownership, the ability to do self-service and do it decentralized by having mixed teams. So the same thing we do in software development by having back-end, front-end developers, testers, and DevOps and operations, maybe even in one team. We want to do the same thing for data. We want to have decentralized teams where we have the data guys working together with the domain guys, with the guys who actually need the data, and make the data available to anybody else and to understand it. So this is another part of the concept. And then, I mean, in the end of the day, we're working with data, and we have all those regulations and government and security, and not everybody's allowed to see every financial data. Not everybody's allowed to see all the data by certain. So we have to have a government, and we have to have a federated governance system, which means like on top of that, we have the data available and we make it available. We have to say who's allowed to access what data at what time. And this is done by then a group of people who actually access the data. And on the other hand, we have to enforce it computational. So the concept is called federated computational governance. And these are probably the three major parts of having a data mesh, and you have to kind of mix it together to do that. And that's the idea, the business idea basically of data mesh as such.
Okay. Then my main take from your explanation is that data mesh is more about a cultural change. It's about not having data as something for only technical people, but about bringing into the teams business people, people from the operations, people from other areas that are making use of the data for creating business value.
Yes, that's basically the idea.
But there should be some kind of impact on the tech landscape, or is there any new systems, new formats, new applications that are being developed for making this happen?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of impact on the general culture of a company if you do that. So first of all, as I mentioned before, you're trying to establish mixed teams. That means you have people from data engineers, data scientists maybe, software development, DevOps working together with business owner, let's say finance, marketing guys, any kind of commercial people, domains that you can imagine, logistics or whatever you can find, in a company. So first of all, that has to change. You have to have mixed teams, and people have to get used to working together, and they have to develop a common language actually. And they even have to develop a common language within the company so that you can, in the end, within the companies, the different domains can talk to each other about that. So that's one of the things. So becoming and accepting mixed teams is important. Then the second thing is it's also important to become a data-driven company. You have to accept that you look at data more and that you try to express results and so on in data, and that you try to do this. And this is a difficult transition. It sounds easy at the beginning, especially for us data people and data community. It sounds very, but you have to imagine. People say, why do we have to change it? We have always done it this way. It works. What advantages do we get? And one of the main things in seeing a cultural change is that the advantages can't be seen easily. You have to do that. And then you have to rethink your organization. You might have to rethink the domains and the boundaries of your organization. You might not separate marketing from sales in some regards. You change the boundaries. You put logistics together with some financing numbers, or production with some of the logistics, and so on. It depends on the whole view. You might have different departments. There might be different logistic departments which have a different domain because they work together actually, and they should have the same databases and the same information together. So this is one thing. And then another thing often is that today, the CIOs, the guys who had the project, they come to their boss and say, you guys, they went 5 years ago, we built those big data lakes now, and we go there now, and it will be solution for the next 10 years, and we have never again a problem. And now they have to go back to their guys and say, guys, sorry, we were kind of wrong. We put there millions, now we have to change it again because this is a lot more agile, flexible, and helps us a lot. So this is another problem that you have. And then the data governance part is difficult. You have to establish from each domain, you have to get people together, you have to CIO office together, and because we are now decentralizing the whole business of data, of the data lake, and even of the data governance from the CIO to more of a democratic, federated approach kind of thing. What happens is you kind of have to get the support from CIO, from others. People have to relinquish their power within the company of being that data guy to something else, being the data driver. So it is a whole process which changes an organization actually, and which has to be forced or which has to be supported by the top management. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So from that thing, yeah.
Yes, especially with the cultural change is one of the main problems. I would assume the mindset change is similar to the one we saw around 5-7 years ago with Scrum. Like moving from waterfall to Scrum was a mindset change just by starting to develop small chunks of a system or just core functionalities and growing from there in a sprint basis. I would assume the effort that a company has to do for enabling data mesh is a similar one.
Yeah, and I would even go further. I don't agree that everybody has understood agile development yet and Scrum and these whole thing. So I've seen it in companies. They basically do waterfall just within Scrum. Yeah, and doing like that.
That's a topic for another episode.
Yeah, it will be another episode, I guess. But we are right at the beginning of that, and we have a couple of companies, and especially younger companies, who switch to that business. Yeah, and companies who start more greenfield than others, they switch to this business. But to actually get this done is hard work. And if you look at and listen to the people who show success stories, they usually, the success is that they made it possible within small parts of larger companies to bring this to the table and to start small domains which work together already, which can show some success. But then you still have to teach it within other companies. And oftentimes you also have to teach data literacy to people. So you have to teach people how to read data, how to work with data, what does it actually mean, and so on, in order to make that possible. And this is a large change, and this would take definitely time, and some will be faster than others. And we are, I would say, very much, like you said, very much at the beginning of this process of doing that and of managing this part of data mesh as such.
And then my last question for this episode and are on the main components of data mesh. What is the state of the art?
Well, state of the art is difficult. So you have more or less of a higher business view on or a higher architectural view on what you want to do. So first of all, you want to have an easy domain setup. So the idea is that you have a standardized domain. For each domain, they get a standardized set of tools. You can do that more strict or less strict. So you can give them more freedom to use their own tools or less, but you give them a basis, which basically on a press of a button, you can set up for them their complete infrastructure. This can be just like a cloud native infrastructure that they get a Docker and they get CI/CD pipelines and DevOps and so on set up, and then they use their own software on top of it that can go into the direction that you set them up a Databricks clusters automatically with some databases like Snowflake and some front end like Click or TensorBoard or whatever you want. I mean Click or a Power BI or whatever you wanted. So in that sense, the idea is for the domain you established an easy to set up system that everybody starts to use so that you have a standardization within the company. And then on top of that, people start to build their data product with the tools they have available. Yeah. So now you need another, in order to find all the different data tools or data products that are available, you now need another component to the whole mesh, which is a data catalog. So you have to find and build a component which actually allows you to put the data and the information in that everybody can think of. At the same time, you need to establish guidance. How does data need to look like in order to be available for the data catalog? And what are the rules in order to access the data, and even who and what type of people are allowed to access what data? So the second thing is it's an additional component which would be somehow taking care of the data governance. So you have a data catalog and a data governance component. Yeah. And now here comes the part. So what is the solution for that? So every hyperscaler right now tries to build their own version of this and their own solution for that. Yeah. And then you have a lot of companies and which are also going into the space, which can be Databricks, which can be Snowflake. But if you look like Azure Synapse, which can do stuff, and then they have all kinds of applications you can look at which do that. Yeah. So open source application like Amundsen, which I think comes from Lyft, which was developed there, but also other catalogs can be done. And then within those domains and within those specified domains, you can use any of the tools that are available that you know and your organization uses and you know and you want to use. So basically right now there is no standardized data mesh, but everybody has to build their own, and there is no state of the art. You have some state of the art tools for the data warehousing, data lakehouse, whatever you want, for the Power BIs, for the analysis part, for the maybe ML ops parts and so on, but you kind of specify what you use by yourself. What might be important to mention, you have to build in tools in order to monitor the data quality. You have to have an admin console so you can access data, that you can set up the governance part and so on. You have to build some kind of data observability, data reliability tools, tool set into that. And you have to have the data discovery part with the data catalog down. So these are the common tools you see. But to see, there are some more advanced than other tools, but maybe they don't fit your bill at the moment because they're not comprehensively fit everything at the moment. So this is kind of the case.
When someone from the audience needs support or wants to get advice on how to set data mesh, I will put the LinkedIn of Miron in the description, and then feel free to contact him. Then thank you very much for this introduction, Miron. I'm looking forward for the second part on the data mesh use cases. Have a nice day.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.